another aspect to this, which I kind of started perceiving just after the turn of the millennium, that this is some kind of simulation. And so if you bring it all together, what is the simulation? It's information. So people talk about the matrix. Okay, so what is the matrix? Take the theme of the Matrix movies. You're out of the matrix, and then they put the thing in the back of your neck, and you start processing the information of the matrix. And at that point, you perceive and experience as if you are in the matrix. What's happened is you've been given a different information source, and that is suddenly your reality. So this matrix, this simulation, is simply information. But it's information that has to be decoded. Otherwise, people will not experience it. Just like, radio stations, television stations sharing the same space in the old analog system. If you're not on its frequency of that information to decode it, then you're not even aware of its existence. Mm. So the two things go together. The creation of an information construct that people call the matrix or the simulation, and the, if you like, physical form, the biological computer, that is tuned to that information source. So it decodes it into a sense of reality. And you can see the parallels of this with computer games, virtual reality games. What do the five senses do? They pick up vibrational frequency information. They turn it into electrical signals and send it to the brain, and the brain constructs reality from that information. So if you take the ear doesn't hear words, it picks up frequency fields, like from the vocal cords. And it decodes that information from the frequency state into an electrical state, another form of frequency really, and then it communicates it to the brain. And only when the brain decodes that information do we hear words, do we hear sound. If you get smacked on the leg, then an information signal goes from that point of impact to the brain. And only when the brain decodes it do we say, ouch. And there are pain relief techniques now, which are designed to stop that signal taking place so that the brain doesn't say ouch because it doesn't feel anything. So it's all an illusion of frequencies turning to electrical signals and communicated to the brain, which then constructs reality from that information. And if you look at a virtual reality game, they are hacking into that process. So you put the headset on, you put the earphones on, you put the gloves on in these more sophisticated ones to simulate touch. And that information overrides the normal decoding of reality. And you've only got to see these people who are, got the headset on all this gear, and you see them reacting. To them, it's absolutely real because the brain thinks, well, I'm just decoding information like I was before. This seems real to me. And so people are frightened or whatever, or they think they're falling over a cliff. And all they're doing is decoding information from a technological source. So what this matrix is a similar principle. It's something that has been created to be the dominant source of information that we decode. Thus, it becomes the reality we think we're decoding. And I kind of concluded this and many other things. And then I came across the amazing find in Nagamadi, about 75, 80 miles north of Luxor in Egypt. In 1945, in an earthen jar, they found this treasure trove of writings from the Gnostics, a belief system, the Gnostic belief system. The Gnostics were the people that basically ran the Great Library or Royal Library of Alexandria, and which was an incredible depository of information from the ancient world. And they were coming to scientific conclusions way back then that have been confirmed, thousands of years or hundreds of years later. And these writings, the Nag Hammadi library, I think they call it. I've got them all up there in great detail in a couple of books, which have translated them. And they describe not only a non-human force manipulating human society from the hidden, they call them the archons, which is Greek for rulers, but they describe the fact that we live in a fake reality and that true prime reality is beyond the fake reality, and that the fake reality has been created by these archontic gods, this archontic force. And as I'm reading through their descriptions, it's very clear that if you take the way they obviously describe things from their time period perspective, if you just transfer what they say into the modern world of technology and virtual reality, that we live in that they were describing rather a simulation. And when I concluded this, the simulation stuff, just after the turn of the millennium, there was only one other person who I really came across, called Nick Bostrom at Oxford University. He didn't see it the same way that I saw it, but he was writing about the possibility we live in a simulation. But now it's really gathered pace within science, and the simulation hypothesis is supported by a lot of people in the mainstream as an explanation for what the hell is going on and where the hell we are. And so the five senses are not only locked in to this matrix, this simulation, they're freaking decoding it, right? So if you only live your life and perceive from the perspective of the five senses, then you're in the matrix and you are of the matrix, because it's your only reality that you consciously perceive. And so that's where you're trying to get a fix on what's happening and who you are and where you are. You're trying to get a fix from the very informational prison that you're locked into. But when you start to expand your awareness, when the nature of the I is transformed into a perception of a much greater self, with that expansion of the sense of identity expands the consciousness relating to that self-identity. And you start to breach the walls of the matrix. You start to breach the walls of the five sense reality. And from that perspective, you start to see things suddenly that you weren't seeing before. That can see the dots. That can see how the dots connect. We're back to the river from source to sea, or the next turn in it. And so those that awaken, and we talk into the shamans of history and all the different people that have gone into these other levels of reality beyond the confines of the matrix, you start to see a very different world, and you start to see a very different reality, and you start to see this world in very different terms. And you look through history about how those people are always the ones that have been targeted, because this cult does not want them telling the rest of the people what they have perceived. And Plato did that I think brilliant description of reality known as the allegory of the cave, where he talked about prisoners in a cave who were in chains, and the only thing they could see was the wall of the cave in front of them. and there was a fire behind them, but they couldn't see that. And there were people and animals walking past the fire, but they couldn't see them. But what they were doing was projecting their shadows on the wall that the prisoners could see. And that became the reality of the prisoners. To the prisoners, that was reality, the shadows on the wall. And he kind of describes how some of these prisoners became experts on the shadows on the wall. And what he was describing was today's academics and scientists who think they are exploring and understanding reality, when what they're actually exploring and perceiving is a simulation, not the greater reality. And he describes how one of the prisoners got out, realized the situation, came back, tried to tell the other prisoners, this is not real, it's not like this. And of course they didn't believe him, which is the story of history, really. But like I say, I think before this simulation situation occurred and human genetics was manipulated to basically tune us into that information source, humanity was very different, very much more expanded, expansive, and aware of the greater reality.